Hello, everybody. What's up? It's Brian again. It's been a long time. Here we are in the next school year, 2017, 2018 at Shorewood High School. Maybe you're watching from across the world. Today, we're going to talk about the Space Needle problem in building Java programs. So, this is on page 135 in building Java programs. And there's a challenge in here, and it's all about nested for loops and program decomposition. And here's the challenge it gives us this picture of the Space Needle, which is from our hometown here in Seattle. And this ASCII art is supposed to resemble the Space Needle. And you are told that you're supposed to produce a program that will output the Space Needle and has this extra challenge that says use a class constant to make it possible to change the size of the figure. So this is a size 4 Space Needle. So I'm just going to change the size a couple times to kind of show you. So this would be a size 2 Space Needle. Looks kind of, it works. Doesn't look that great. If you go down to size 1, it doesn't look all that cool. Yeah, it just kind of doesn't really work quite as well for size 1. But if you do like a size 9, it should do something that's kind of interesting. Right? It just does like a giant Space Needle, but it's all like proportional, right? So it's kind of nice. Back to size 4. So let's see if we can determine what makes this a size 4. You can kind of see that there are 4 things here at the top. There are 4 rows of this upper disk. There are 4 rows of the lower disk, and then you can kind of see that everything is kind of like related to the number 4 here, right? 4 more layers down here along with the bottom. So this is what the challenge is, and let's go ahead and get started trying to get after this problem. But here's what we're going to do first, okay? The first thing that we're going to do, I'm going to comment. Well, no, it's all right. I think we can follow along. We're going to build a program that produces this Space Needle regardless of the size. So we're just going to say, forget about this class constant idea. We're going to go back and sweep up the class constant part of it, probably in like a second video or maybe later on in this video, depending on how we do on time. All right? So I'm going to go ahead and, as you can see, I solved this once before. I'm going to go ahead and make a new one. Okay, so I'm make a new class. Hopefully you guys are coming with me. New class, I'll call this Space Needle. Since I already have a class called Space Needle, I'm going to call this one Space Needle 2. So here we go. Let's do this, guys. All right, I don't need my console for now. Over here, I'm going to have this available to me if I want to see the Space Needle again. There it is. Okay. All right, so let's take a look. First things first, let's go ahead and make sure you have your main method if you don't have that. So you may be kind of checking out this video, maybe different parts of the year. Maybe you're checking it out and you're kind of a more experienced programmer. At this point in the school year, we don't know much about anything in Java other than nested for loops. We don't have any idea about more advanced concepts that might make this problem easier. So I'm going to stay with the limitations of the time of year that we are in AP Computer Science. Okay, so let's go ahead and take a look at the Space Needle and see if we can decompose this problem. This is what I recommend doing. Break it down into parts. Okay, so I'm never going to write all of the logic for producing the Space Needle inside the main method. I'm going to break it down, especially stuff that I can see that's repeated. Like, do you see this part? That's repeated down here. Right? So maybe I should have a name or a method that would just do that. Okay. Same with this part. If you notice this right here, this structure is repeated at the bottom of the pyramid or the bottom of the Space Needle. So maybe I should have a function that does that or a method that does that. So let's actually give these a name. Okay. So I'm going to say let's call this a needle. Okay, so let's say that we're going to produce a needle. Okay, so in my program, I'm just going to pretend like, that's not what I want. I'm going to pretend like I have a function called needle. I don't, but I'm going to call it once I have it, right? So I'm going to keep track of this. I'm going to draw my needle, and then what am I going to draw? Let's see. Then I'm going to draw this. I need to call that something. So I'll call that it's like the upper part of the disk, right? So if that middle part of the Space Needle is the disk, let's say that this is the upper part of the disk. Upper disk. Now, what I'm using here is an idea called abstraction. I'm pretending like somebody made these methods for me already, where if I called them in the right order, it would produce this. Of course, I have to be that person to develop these functions, but first I'm going to zoom out and do it from this big level. Right, so how about this next part? So I need next to produce the lower part of the disk. So the lower part of the disk is something I'll have to write later. So I have needle, upper disk, and lower disk, and then after that I need to actually do another needle. You notice that? So it's going to be a needle all over again. So I recommend doing this instead of just diving into like writing for loop structures and trying to get after it right away. Try to look at it from a big picture perspective and give it a zoomed out version of what you're going to do, and then take it piece by piece. You got to divide things up into smaller pieces or you have no hope. Okay, so we have this part. I don't know, let's call this the tower. Okay, so maybe I'll call that the tower. So after that second needle I have the tower, and then I have the base, which is actually, if you notice, is the same as the upper part of the disk. Do you see how it's identical? So all I'd have to do is, call the upper disk again. All right, so then I would be done, right? So the nice thing about this is I only have to write the logic or the part of this upper disk once, and I get to call it twice. So you're saving time, saving thought, saving space. It's good programming practice. So we're reusing some functionality. So that's really good. All right, so let's take these one by one. Let's go ahead and develop the needle. So we need to say public static void needle. All right, so this is the function, the method header for needle. Now you'll notice that Java's not complaining because it's like, oh cool, you're writing needle, now I can use it. This is valid code. It's an empty method, but it's valid. And we're going to have to go and do all that other stuff later. So I'm going to take this, comment that out. Command 7 if you're on an Apple. Okay, needle. What does a needle look like? Okay, so I think what we have to do first is actually print some spaces. Okay, that we have to print like a proper amount of space before all this space actually needs to get printed. So I guess we could so I can kind of count here. You see each of these little like sections here? That's 3, 6, 9, 12. So I need 12 spaces before I even print these little characters here. So I'm going to run a for loop, a single for loop that runs 12 spaces. But before I do that, do you notice like how many rows of needle I have? 1, 2, 3, 4. So the first thing I need to do before I get to the spaces, I kind of jumped the gun, is I need to write an outer for loop that's going to run something 4 times. And that process is going to be to print these little characters here. So I need 4 rows of needle. Okay, so let's go ahead and do that. So I'm going to say this outer loop controls row. For in row. So row beginning at 0. So I always start at row 0, and I need 4 of them. So I say less than 4. Row plus plus. Now hopefully, if you're at the level where you're trying this space needle problem, this syntax is not new to you. If you need a brush up on for loops, I would highly recommend going somewhere else for that. I shouldn't stop and slow down to explain for loops in this video. It would just get too long. Okay. So hopefully you know that this is going to give you 4 repetitions. Inside here, I need to print some spaces. Okay, and then I need to print the characters. And then go down a line. And then next line. Okay, so I like to do this, right? This is the strategy I've developed as I've gotten a little better at programming. I love to kind of do things from like a zoomed out perspective and then fill in the details. So do you guys remember how many spaces we need? I begin on space 0, and then I think I needed the space to grow to be as big as, I needed 12 spaces. So I say less than 12 and then space plus plus. All right, so how do I print all the spaces without going on to the next line? It's going to be system.out.print and then a space, and there we go. So that should give me 12 spaces. Very good. So, from 0 all the way up to 11, that's 12. Next, I need to print these characters. I don't think I need to loop it because it's just printing 2 of them every single time, right? System.out.print these characters. And then I need to go to a next line. And that's just a println. Now, I guess you could have, one thing you could have done is just like made this a println, and that's fine. But I kind of like to do this because I never have to worry about, I can clearly see that it's a next line. Okay, so let's actually look at the output of this program. All it should be doing is printing the needle. Let's see if we got some good needle here. Yep, there we go. That's exactly what we wanted. Okay, hopefully we don't have to adjust the number of spaces. I think we're going to be good. Now we need to work on the upper disk. This is where it's going to get kind of hard. This needle was a nice warm-up, but we are now working on the upper disk. So let's go ahead and write the method for that. All right, so it's going to look like this: public static void upper disk. Okay, so let's take this apart. How many rows of upper disk do we want? Well, this is a little tricky because I think we want 4 rows of upper disk. You see them? 1, 2, 3, 4. And then we have this like belt line. Okay, so I don't count that as part of the upper disk because you see how it has a different pattern. It's like different characters and stuff. So I'm going to call this part right here the upper disk right there. And then, this is the rows that we're going to do. So we need 4 rows of upper disk, which makes sense, right? Because we remember the size is 4. We'll get to that stuff later, but we should probably say these are the rows. So I need 4 rows of upper disk. Keep it going the wrong way. So I need 4 rows of upper disk. So what that's going to look like is 4. Okay, 4 rows. Some rows. 4. Man, oh man, come on. Int row begins at 0. Row is going to be less than 4. Row plus plus. That gives me 4, right? From 0 all the way up to 3. And then inside here, okay, this is going to be kind of crazy. The first thing I need to do is I need to print the proper amount of spaces, right? So I guess the proper amount of spaces before I begin printing this stuff is kind of different. Actually, it begins here, right? It's kind of different depending on what row I'm in. So if I'm in row 1, I print that much space. If I'm in row 2, I print that much space. And I'm in row 3, I print that much space, and then I print nothing. So here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to stay zoomed out, and I'm going to say, okay, I definitely need to print some spaces. That's going to be a little complex, but that's okay. After that, I need to print. So what is next? After I print my spaces, I need to print. I always want to print. Do you notice what it's always next? It's always this thing, right? It's always that same exact starting, right? Every time I'm done with my spaces, I print this thing, right? So then I want to print that. So I want to print this. Okay, what comes after that? I need to print, I need to print these colon symbols. Okay, sometimes I don't print any, but it looks like whatever the amount that I print totally depends on the row that I'm in. So in row 0, I don't print any, and then in row 1, I print 3, and so on, right? So I definitely want to print some of them after I print that little beginning sequence. So let's go take a look. I need to print the proper amount of these guys. Okay, then what's next? After the little colon symbols, I need to print the middle, right? So I need to print that middle thing. So I got that. So I can do print this. And then you notice what we do again on the other side? We're going to print that same proper amount of colons, okay? So I guess I would just repeat that comment, right? It's the same amount on both sides. So then I would just take this, copy it, put it down here. And then finally, to wrap up the row, I have to print the end of the row, which looks like this, okay? After every row, I finish that. And then I need to print this thing. And then actually, after the rows are over, after all 4 rows are over, do you notice? So I need the rows of the upper disk, and then I need that belt line thing, right? I need to print the belt line. So let's actually take a look at the belt line later, but I need to print the belt line. Let's call it the belt line. I don't even think that's a word, but let's make it 2 to make it happier. Okay, here we go. All right, so some of these are going to be a little bit. So this is going to be easy. Let's get some confidence and take this one. We always print that, and it never depends on what row we're on. We always print that after the proper amount of spaces. Let's go ahead and do that. System.out. Ooh, did I forget next line? I did. I did forget next line. It's after this. I need a next line. Okay, so to print this thing is pretty easy. System.out.print. All right, I need to write the 2 underscores, which are next to your 0 above your P, and then this slash, which is not a special slash. Okay, the other one is actually going to be special. The printing this is going to be easy, right? This isn't going to be a problem. System.out.print my 2 vertical bars, all right? And then there's a proper amount of colon again, and then this thing we can do. System.out.print. I need to do the backslash, which is a special character, which requires 2 of them. If you haven't learned about special sequences like that, a whole different video for that. The backslash is special. You need to do 2 of them in order to only see 1. Okay, I'm not going to get into the details of why that is, but hopefully you know about escape sequences right now from computer science. Then we need the next line. This will be easy, right? System.out.println. All right. Okay. Now the proper amount of spaces. Okay, let's look at the proper amount of spaces. Okay, let's change that to proper amount of spaces. Okay, so let's take some notes here. Let's take a look. All right, let's see. The number of spaces that I print here. It's kind of hard to count, but if you look below, you see how it's like this thing is 3 characters right here, this thing is 3, and this thing is 3. So this must be 9 spaces. Does that make sense? So this is 3, and this is 3. I need 9 spaces on row 1. Then I need 6 spaces on row 2. Then I need 3 spaces on row 3, and then I need no spaces on row 4. Oh, okay. Okay, so let's see here. Do you notice that? Can we make a little table? I just want this. I'm going to do this once. I don't want to like berate the point by doing it on every single example, but let me go ahead and like add a table here real quick and see if we can count, see if we can figure out. So if this is the row number and these are the spaces. So on row number 0, I wanted 9 spaces. On row number 1, I wanted 6 spaces. On row number 2, I wanted 3 spaces. And on row number 3, which is actually the 4th row, right? I wanted 0 spaces. Do you see that there's an algebraic relationship between the row number and the number of spaces? Right? Do you see the slope of this thing? It's not very big. Let me see if I can make it bigger for you guys. All right, how smart is this thing? It's pretty smart. There you go. All right, so you can see that as row goes up, spaces go down by 3. So the relationship has something to do with -3 times the row. But it's not that simple, is it? It's not -3 times the row, because -3 times 0 doesn't give you 9. -1 times 3 doesn't give you 6. It's always off by 9 if you noticed, right? So we need to actually add 9 there. So once we do that, this formula works for all, right? So plug in a row number like 3. What's -3 times 3? Add 9. So -3 times 3 is -9. Add 9 gives you 0. This gives you the proper amount of spaces every time. Right? So this is actually how much we want the inner for loop to run for the spaces. Depending on the row, it will plug it into this formula, and we want that number to adjust as the row goes up. So here's how you do it. So we're going to print the proper amount of spaces, and the proper amount of spaces is going to be, we'll say we're going to begin on space 0, like always, and space will grow to be less than that expression. And then we're going to do space plus plus. I almost said row plus plus. That's the kind of stuff I always mess up on. And then easy inside here, system.out.print the space character. Okay. All right. So just keep in mind, remember on row 0, can you see how many spaces we're going to get? Just imagine this. We're on row 0 the first time we're through this upper disk loop. So row 0 means going to be -3 times 0 plus 9, which means we're going to get 9 spaces. If you plug in the next row will be 1. -3 times 1 plus 9 is 6. It will give us the proper amount of spaces depending on the row. So if the number of spaces that you're going to print depends on your row, you better have a conditional that includes row as part of that formula. Does that make sense? The number of spaces depends on what row you're in. You better have a row as part of your conditional. Okay? It's got to be that way. Okay, so now can you guys see that the proper amount of colons is going to be very similar? So let's look at the proper amount of colons. For int colon equals 0 colon less than, oh, I don't know this. So actually, let's go to the table, or let's go to the thing. That's not what I want. Keep on going to this other assignment. Here we go. So look at this. On row 0, we don't want any. On row 1, we want 3. On row 2, we want 6. On row 3, we want 9. That's a simpler linear relationship, isn't it? Row 0, we want none. Row 1, we want 3. Row 2, we want 6. Row 3, we want 9. Can you see that the number of colons we want is just 3 times the row? Okay, we could have made a table for that, but I think I would encourage you guys to do it if you need to. So it's always 3 times the row. And then we'll say colon plus plus. System.out.print. And then we need that colon character. All right, so that's going to give us the proper amount of colons. And it turns out that this actually happens twice, doesn't it? Okay, we do it once here and once after the middle. I think that might be okay. Let's go into our main method. So here's our main method. Let's call upper disk and just see what happens. So let's uncomment this. So you highlight it and hit Command 7. That'll unhighlight it as well. Let's see what happens. We get something good? We do. Right on. So I guess we need that belt line still, but that worked. Great. So don't count on that. I'm not always going to have it work on the first try. Usually I'll mess up somehow in one way or another. So here's my upper disk. I still need the belt line. Okay, can we go to the belt line? All right, let's do the belt line. Okay, so the belt line is going to start like this. It always starts with the vertical bar. Then it does a bunch of this stuff, the quotes, and then it ends with a vertical bar. Okay, so let's do that. So we can actually do that, right? The belt line is going to start with system.out.print the vertical bar. And then we have a bunch of quotations. And then we have this, the ending vertical bar, system.out.print the other vertical bar. Okay, so a bunch of quotations. How many exactly? Let's go look. Let's go take a look. How many of these? All right, this is going to be kind of hard to count. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. 12 is halfway, so 24 must be the full way. So I'm going to say that there's 24 of these things. So it's going to be 4 int quote beginning at 0. Quote is going to grow to be, I want it to be 24. I want to see 24 of them, so I say quote is less than 24. Quote plus plus. System.out.print, not println. The quote character is special. It's an escape sequence, so in order to even see a quote, you actually have to do \quote. Okay, take a look at that. Zoom in if you have to. \quote is the way we see a quote, okay? Now, you can kind of visualize why. I don't want to get into a lesson on escape sequences, but I can't just tap a quote between there because then it thinks that this is the beginning and the end of the string. And then it's like, all this stuff makes no sense to me. So \quote is the way it interprets this right here as a single quote, in case you can't remember your escape sequences. So let's see if that prints the belt line now. Yay, there's our belt line. Okay, we're good now. Okay, so there we go. We have our upper disk. Now our lower disk. You ready? I don't know how long this video is running right now. It feels like it's getting long already, so I'm definitely not going to talk about the class constant in this video. So we have so far we have our needle, we have our upper disk, and now let's work on our lower disk. So here we go. Take out the fluff here. Some more fluff, that's okay. Our header is public, static, void, lower disk. All right, here we go. So what is a lower disk all about? Let's take a look. It always begins with this. Well, actually, it actually begins with spaces, doesn't it? There's always space at the beginning. Sometimes none, but sometimes. So we need to print the proper amount of space. So let's go ahead and write these notes. Oh yeah, how many rows? How many rows? How many rows of lower disk? There are 4. No surprise there, right? So we need some rows of. So we do print 4 rows of lower disk. 4, row is 0, row less than 4, row plus plus, and all right, so inside every row, remember, we want to print the proper amount of spaces. That which depends on the row, right? Then we need to print, so each one of these things kind of like begins with the same characters, right? It begins with these characters, these 2 right here. And then it has a bunch of little mountains inside, right? So we can at least get this, right? We can say, then we need to print this. So after we do that beginning, then we need to print a bunch of these little mountains, okay? So I need to print the proper amount of mountains, which depends on the row. So I need to print proper amount of these things. Oops. Like that. Oops, no, not like that. Come on now. Like that. I need to print the proper amount of these. Okay, and then at the end there's this thing. Right? At the end there's that. So then I need to print. So hopefully you guys see that this strategy of commenting out your process is really, really valuable. It actually makes the problem so much easier. I'm telling you. Don't try to just get into for loops and just try to like hack your way through it. It's easy to get lost and then you get frustrated and then you want to quit and blame your teacher. All right, so give this a try. All right, so how about this? Print the proper amount of spaces. What is the proper amount of spaces? Oh boy. Okay, let's see. In the 0th row of the lower disk, I want no spaces. Then I want 2 spaces. Is that right? Is it 2? Yeah, I guess it is 2. And then I want 4, and then I want 6. So 0, 2, 4, 6. It looks like it's counting by 2. So it's like I need 4 int row, or sorry, not int space equals 0. Space, I want always the space to be, isn't it twice the row? So 2 times the row, isn't it right? Can we look at this? So 2 times row 0 is 0. 2 times row 1, that gives me 2 spaces. I think that's right. Right? So less than 2 times the row, whatever row I'm on. And then I want space to go up by 1. Okay, and then I'm going to print the space. Okay. Then I got to print this guy. That's going to be easy, right? I need that thing. That's a backslash. So we got to watch out. That's a backslash. In order to see a single one of those backslashes, I need 2 of those. Remember that? It's a special character. Okay, now I need to print the proper amount of mountains. All right, let's go take a look. All right, so in row 0, I want 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11 mountains. So 11 to start, and then you can see it shrinks by 2 every time. 11 mountains, then 9, then 7, and then 5. Okay, I need to look at the table just because so these aren't spaces now, these are going to be mountains. I need to fix this. So in row 0, it was like 11, or was it 9? Am I tripping? No, I think it's 11. 11, 9, then 7, then 5. Oops, that's 5. This is 7. All right, what's the relationship here? Do you see it? The slope, I guess, or the constant rate of change is -2. So it must have something to do with -2 times the row. And then you can see to fix the rest of it, -2 times 0 doesn't give me 11. I need to add 11. So that must be it. -2 times row plus 11. So sometimes that really helps me. I still use it all the time, the little table method. Mountain beginning at 0, and then mountain will grow to be as big as this. Oops. It was, what was it? -2 times the row plus 11. Row plus, or not row, it's a mountain plus plus. All right, so let's print the mountain. I forgot to do something here. I need to open, oh no, I don't want that. I need to open my braces for the for loop. Okay, let's print the mountain. System, dot out, dot print. And then the mountain is kind of weird because it has a backslash in it. So to print the mountain, you need a // and a backslash, which remember requires 2 backslashes in order to even see it. And then I print this last thing. System.out.print the end of the mountain, or the end of the row, looks like this. And then I'm going to go to a next line. This might bother you that I don't just do it in the line previous here, but you know what? It's my style, okay? Sysout. There you go. So now I know that it clearly is the next line. Okay. I don't know. Let's see. I may have messed up, and you guys could be screaming at your screen, and we could have problems here. But let's take a look. I wonder if I get my lower disk. I forgot to uncomment that code. So I need to go up to my main method and uncomment that code right here. Oops, you know what I forgot to do? Can you tell? After my belt line, I never went to a next line, did I? Right, so actually in my upper disk, which I thought I was done with, turns out that I didn't go to a new line after I did this, so I need to do a new line. Okay, after my belt line, I should go down, and I bet it's going to be better now. Yeah, there we go. Lower disk. Radical. All right, is there anything weird at the bottom of that lower disk that I'm not seeing? Let's go look. No, I think that's it. Now we need to do the needle again. Okay, so we call the needle. We're already done with needle, so we're ready to actually look at this. Let's do this. Bam. All right, we're starting to build our needle, guys. This looks pretty good. All right, now let's go to the tower. How many rows of tower do we need? This looks like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Okay, there's 12 of them. So I need to build my tower, so I'm going to start my tower method. This video is starting to feel awful long. That's okay, though. You guys love it, I hope. So this is not. See, this is why having fluff in your code is dangerous, because you end up writing code in the wrong places. So don't just delete fluff when you have it. Here's public static void tower. Did I call it tower? I think so. All right, remember I need 12 rows of tower. All right, so we know how to do that by now. All right, now I need, turns out that I'm going to need the proper amount of spaces. Later on, you know, it turns out that it doesn't depend on row here, but once we get to the size, that's going to really matter. But let's just say, let's see, can we count? Is there an easy way to count that number of spaces? Oh man, let's see if I can do it this way. I'm going to try to just go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 9. Okay, let's see if I can do that again. Control Z. All right, I think 9 is correct. Let's trust 9, and then we'll see what happens. Okay, so I need to print 9 spaces. And then I need to print this little character. I need to print, what was it? It looks like this, right? Is it like that? Something like that. Actually, I need to go look again. Yep, that's it. Okay, vertical bar, %, vertical, vertical, %, vertical. Okay, it's that thing, okay? And then that's it. And then we need to go to the next line. Okay, we can print 9 spaces. You know how to do that. 4, space beginning at 0, space less than 9, space plus plus. I just print. It's going to be important to have this space loop later as the size changes, so let's have it. We need a system.out.print a bunch of spaces. Okay. This thing is also this is going to get more sophisticated as the size thing gets involved, because that thing gets thicker and wider and stuff like that. But let's leave it like this for now. We'll change it in the next video. We don't need, this isn't a for loop. It's simply a print. System.out.print, and then we'll just print this weird stuff. Right? Vertical, %, vertical, vertical, %, vertical. Close it off, and then there's a next line. Okay. Thank you, autocomplete. Let's see. I'm just going to kind of try to make this more readable. I usually don't like a whole lot of space in my code, but sometimes it can help. 12 rows of tower with 9 spaces, and then this thing, and then next line, and it'll do that 9 times. So let's actually see if that prints the tower. Do we get a tower? And it worked. The 9 spaces was the proper amount of space. And then remember, thank goodness there's not a whole another one to go to, because remember that lower part of the Space Needle is actually the upper disk all over again. So now we have our Space Needle of size 4. Okay? So the challenge is, if I asked you to make a bigger one of size 5, you would have to go change so much code. And we're actually going to have to do that, unfortunately. But we're going to try to change it once and for all, where that if I give you a size like I did in my other program, you're able to change the size of all of it. Now, it turns out a lot of stuff depends on the size. We'll get to that in the next video, but I hope this was helpful for you getting the Space Needle built. And if you guys have any comments for me, I'd love to hear them. If something I did was unclear or you want me to do more examples, please leave me a message. I hope you enjoyed it, and let's finish the Space Needle in part 2, which I'll probably record tomorrow. Have a great one, and I'll talk to you guys in the near future. Happy coding.